We will go ahead and get started. My name is Paris Charles. I'm the Assistant Director for Compliance and Quality Assurance here at the University of San Francisco, and I'll be leading the webinar here with you all today. On the chat box or on the Q&A box, we have my associate Jason Lau, and he's our Associate Director for Operations here at the University of San Francisco. So he will be helping us out in the chat today. Thank you all for joining us. A few housekeeping items. Please use the Q&A box throughout the presentation if you have any questions. They will be answered throughout the presentation and at the end. If you do have any questions specific to your family situation or your student, please contact the Office of Financial Aid directly, and we will have a QR code at the end that has our information on it. So today we will be reviewing information on how to request a financial aid appeal. So first and foremost, it's important to understand that USF does not compete or match financial aid offers received at other institutions. If the student's SAI calculated from the FAFSA is 0 or less, they're not eligible to complete an appeal, as you're already being offered the maximum in federal, state, and institutional aid for which you qualify. Merit aid cannot be appealed. However, if you do have questions on your merit aid eligibility, please contact the admissions office or your admissions counselor directly. So continuing, in order to request an appeal, a student must receive a financial aid offer first. So before you're able to request an appeal, you do have to be offered financial aid first in order to appeal it. Outstanding requirements such as verification are required to be completed before submitting an appeal and before an appeal can be processed. So what is the special circumstance? Financial aid administrators are authorized to make changes to your 2024-25 FAFSA if it is based on unique circumstances that have affected your family's ability to pay for college, and if the FAFSA is no longer an accurate reflection of your current financial circumstances. So if there have been circumstances or changes to your household situation or financial situation since the tax year used on the 24-25 FAFSA, which is the 2022 tax year, then you can reach out to us and let us know what's going on so that we can review your circumstance. So some circumstances that you may submit an appeal for is if there has been a death of a parent or a spouse, if there's unusual medical or dental expenses that are not covered by insurance, if there is a loss of employment or income since the information reported on the FAFSA, if there is extraordinary dependent care expenses, if there is a divorce or separation of the parents, secondary school tuition, such as private K-12 tuition costs, if the student is completely unable to obtain the parental information, and if the sibling is in college. That's a new one for 24-25, since it's no longer taken into account on the FAFSA. So some special circumstances exclusive to dependent students include a prolonged loss of income due to unemployment of your parent contributors, prolonged reduction of income due to pay cut or reduced hours for your parent contributor, a death of a parent, out-of-pocket educational expenses for dependent students whose contributors support more than one sibling in the family size who is enrolled at least half-time at a Title IV eligible institution. So if you have a sibling that is in college at least half-time and receiving Title IV aid, then you can submit an appeal request and review for that. If you're an independent student, if you have a prolonged loss of income due to unemployment, of you or your spouse, prolonged reduction of income due to pay cut or reduced working hours for your spouse, or a death of a spouse. Those are all reasons that an independent student could request an appeal. It's also important to understand that the situation or the circumstance must be active at least 3 months or more before you can pursue an appeal for that circumstance. So how can you file a special circumstances appeal? Well, step one, you will want to reach out to the financial aid office, either by phone, email, or at our Zoom drop-in hours. And there's a QR code here that'll give you the step-by-step instructions. And that's so that you can explain your circumstances so that we can know if you qualify to file a special circumstance appeal and if you're eligible to do one, and to let you know like the next steps and what to expect. When you reach out, you're going to explain the special circumstance. The financial aid specialist will determine your circumstances and if they are allowable under the federal regulations. If the circumstances are allowable, you will submit your documentation online via the Student Forms portal. So financial aid will open an appeal for the student at that point in time, and the student will receive notification to their USF email letting them know where that an appeal has been opened and that they can access the Student Forms portal to submit documentation. So once all documentation that is required has been received, financial aid will review your documentation. If additional documentation is needed, the student will be contacted by email. If the student will be notified via email if the appeal is approved or denied. So either way, once a decision is made on the appeal, you will be notified, the student will be notified by email at their USF email account. So we will go over some of the frequently asked questions for the appeal process. So one of which is, do I have to complete the FAFSA in order to submit an appeal? Yes, FAFSA does need to be on file. This is how we are able to determine your eligibility for the appeal and also know what the original SAI is on the FAFSA and demonstrated need. If I've been selected for verification or I have other outstanding requirements, must that be completed before I can apply for an appeal? So yes, verification, other outstanding financial requirements must be completed before the appeal can be reviewed. So we have to verify the original information on the FAFSA first before we can review and open an appeal. How do I submit my appeal and all supporting documentation? So if it is determined that you do qualify for an appeal, the financial aid administrator will provide instructions on how to upload your documentation within the Student Forms portal. You'll be sent an email and provided a link on how you can access the portal as well. The student signs onto the portal with their MyUSF single sign-on information. How long will it take to review my appeal? Due to the high volume of appeals that we expect to receive and do receive, it may take anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks or more for review. Appeals will be reviewed in the order that they are received. Check the financial aid website for current or processing appeal time. And also the Student Forms portal will show you what status your appeal is in, whether it's, waiting to be reviewed, or if we're reviewing the documents you submitted, and if it's approved or denied. If my appeal is incomplete, can I resubmit it? Yes, you can submit additional information. Only completed appeals will be reviewed. The committee will contact the students via email to provide additional information. Once it is provided, it will be reviewed according to the later date of receipt. So if you do submit an appeal and it is incomplete, but additional documentation is needed, we'll reach out to you and let you know that, and then you will be able to resubmit the missing documentation. At that point in time, once we receive a complete appeal with all the documents that we need, then your review will continue. Can I add additional information once my appeal is submitted? If you have additional information that is relevant to your appeal, it can be added. However, it may delay your appeal decision. It is important that all relevant documentation is provided at the time of submission. So every time you submit a new document, we do have to send that to the committee for review. So it makes much more sense and ease for the family if all the documentation that we request is submitted at the time that you submit the appeal. What type of documentation is needed to accompany an appeal? So some examples include a separation letter from an employer, unemployment insurance documentation, paycheck stubs, statement from legal counsel, or proof of benefits such as CalFresh. Can I appeal a denial decision? If your appeal is not approved, a future appeal can be made depending on the circumstances. For example, if your parent's short-term unemployment changed from a 3-month projection to actually being for the entire year, then this may result in need-based aid eligibility, which you were not originally eligible for. In this case, a subsequent appeal would be considered. So you would need to reach out to us and let us know if circumstances have changed. Is there a limit on how many appeals or how many times I can appeal? So you can appeal a total of 2 times, assuming circumstances have drastically changed since the first appeal. Who makes the appeal decisions? Appeals are reviewed by the USF Financial Aid Appeals Committee, headed by our Director of Financial Aid, Ms. Lori Prince. The appeal cannot be appealed to other departments or the U.S. Department of Education because it's an in-house appeal done by each university based on professional judgment. If my appeal is not approved for the current year, 2024-25, can I appeal for the next year, 25-26? If your FAFSA information for 25-26 is no longer an accurate reflection of your financial circumstances, you can submit an appeal sometime between February and May of 2025. Am I being considered for federal, state, and institutional aid? If your appeal is approved, you will be considered for federal, state, and need-based aid. Some changes may not result in increased federal eligibility. Typically, an increase of institutional aid is not considered. Is a federal aid in the form of a loan or a grant? Your appeal may result in federal grant, Pell Grant, or FSEOG, and or need-based loan. Subsidized loan eligibility is also an option. If my situation hasn't changed yet, but I anticipate that it will, can I appeal or should I wait? You must make an appeal after the change in circumstances has occurred. Appeals submitted based on future developments or future occurrences will be automatically denied. So your circumstance does need to be active for 90 days before you may pursue an appeal. If a decision isn't made before the semester begins, can my aid change? When a decision on your appeal has been made and approved, your aid will be adjusted at that time. If an appeal approval occurs after the semester has begun and payment has been made, any additional aid may be applied to your account and refunded if applicable. So if your balance is already paid off at that time, but you received an approval on a special circumstance appeal that warranted additional need-based aid, the aid would then disperse at that time and be refunded to you in that scenario. So what are some examples of supporting documentation to submit? A signed statement explaining your circumstances. So this is very important to explain thoroughly, provide the necessary dates for your circumstance so that we can fully understand what the exact circumstance is. 2023 federal tax return, that's typically one of the basis of financial documents will ask for earnings statement or pay stubs and your most recent pay stub showing year-to-date earnings. That's another thing. Severance documentation if you were released or terminated from your employment. Statement of year-to-date income, as I mentioned, with like the most recent pay stub. furlough or termination documentation from your employer, bank statement showing proof of loss of income, unemployment insurance, death certificate if there is a death of a parent or spouse, and IRA rollover documentation if there was an IRA rollover in that year. So we'll go over a few appeal scenarios. So this scenario is for a sibling in college. So if your sibling, if you do have a sibling that is in college, if your sibling attends USF, we would need information on, we would open an appeal for you. We would need your sibling's full name and their student ID number. Your sibling will need to be enrolled at least half time for the 24-25 academic year to be considered. And this is only for undergraduate enrollment as well. If your sibling attends another institution, we would need a copy of your sibling's proof of enrollment or registration for 24-25, a copy of your sibling's financial aid award offer for 24-25, a copy of your sibling's cost of attendance or student budget for 24-25, and a copy of your sibling's 24-25 FAFSA submission summary. So we will need all those documentations, and an appeal will be opened for you to be able to submit those if you reach out and let us know. And here's another scenario if a parent is furloughed. So my parents were furloughed. What documentation do I need to submit? So in this scenario, you would need a statement thoroughly explaining the circumstances, and it must be provided along with 2 to 3 pay stubs. The letter from the company indicating that they were furloughed and the date with which they were furloughed. Documentation showing the amount of unemployment they are receiving based on the unemployment insurance claim, and an estimate of the income earned for 2024, which should include the income from work and the unemployment payment. And also the date of when your parent is expected to become reemployed at their job, or the date they became reemployed. So if this was a situation where they left work and they're going back to work, we would just need to know the information in the meantime and when they would be going back. If there was a termination or if the parent was laid off, we would need a statement fully explaining the circumstances and provide the latest 2 to 3 pay stubs. The letter from the company indicating that they were terminated or laid off, including proof of the date that they were. A documentation showing the amount of unemployment they are receiving. And if they are not receiving any unemployment, then a written statement stating that. An estimate of the income earned for 2024, and that should include the income from work and unemployment payment, or any other income that they're receiving. And if your parent has found a new job, the date they became employed and the latest pay stub from that job. If a parent is self-employed, so my parents are self-employed, what documentation do I need to submit? So they need to submit a statement for fully explaining their circumstances or the situation with their self-employment, the 2023 tax return showing the business income and an estimate of what the income was before the change in 2023, along with an estimate as to projected income for the remaining year. So we need to know the past income, the 2023 income, and an estimate of what it will be for the coming year. Provide all documentation that supports the income estimates given. And if your business is cyclical, so if it goes in cycles, please provide information such as the flower shop. And this is 30% of the business comes in during Valentine's Day. And that is it on our Q&A session and our scenarios. This is the information to the financial aid office and the QR code here for you to scan. This is our number, our email. We are available by phone, email, and we also have virtual Zoom drop-in advising if you need to meet with a counselor one-on-one and you don't have an appointment. So you don't need an appointment for that either.